Welcome back, listeners, to another inspiring episode of Inner Peace, Better Health. I'm your host, Sana, and today we have an extraordinary guest with us, Andrew Davie. Now, listeners, Andrew is a man of many talents and experiences. He co hosts the show Happy Hour with Heather and guest, writes crime fiction, novellas, and short stories, and volunteers his time to help others. Now, in 2018, Andrew survived a ruptured brain aneurysm and subarachnoid hemorrhage, a life changing event that led him to start a clinical mental health counseling program to support others in their recovery journeys. Currently, he's also a caregiver for his mother who has been diagnosed with ALS. Listeners, Andrew's story is one of resilience, caregiving, and finding spirituality in the face of adversity. So, let's quickly dive into this compelling, heartfelt conversation with our guest, Andrew Davie. Andrew, welcome to the show, and it's an absolute honor to have you with us today.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak.
Absolutely. Andrew, can you start by sharing your journey of recovery from a ruptured brain aneurysm and how it has shaped your perspective on life?
Sure. Well, before the aneurysm, I had a lot of goals that I wanted to accomplish, including being a published author and probably starting a family one day.
Mm-hmm.
And the aneurysm changed that a lot because I still have difficulty processing emotions today, which makes having relationships with people different. And I realized that publishing a book, when it did actually happen, wasn't going to be a game-changing moment in my life. So my perspective was sort of forced to change. I think it's changed for the better as a result, which is partially because I was able to sort of undo a lot of the conditioning that I'd had growing up, thinking that certain things are really valuable, and then realizing later on that they weren't as important.
Okay.
And the aneurysm sort of forced me to do that. I think the biggest thing that I realized was I always assumed that there was something out there in the world that I didn't have that I needed to get. And as a result of my recovery, I've realized that I pretty much have everything I could want. And it sort of allowed me to reevaluate what I already have and find fulfillment in that. Instead of looking for what I don't have, I could focus on what I had and make the most of it.
Exactly. I totally agree with you. Fortunately or unfortunately, sometimes life gives away so many lessons about gratitude. So, thank you. Thank you so much, Andrew, for sharing this with all of us. It really requires a lot of courage to be vulnerable and to share uh, the the learnings from your own life with all of us. Also, many people might not understand the emotional and physical toll of recovering from a brain aneurysm. So, can you describe, if it's okay for you, what the recovery process was like for you?
Sure. Well, the physical recovery happened pretty quickly I was in the hospital for about 5 weeks. I was in intensive care for the first 3 weeks, and I don't have any memories of that, which I'm sort of glad. and then I was in rehabilitation for about 2 weeks. Um, so at first, I needed to walk with a cane, and I walked very slowly, while someone held a belt around my chest so that if I started to fall, they could be there to help. Um, and I had double vision, so I had to wear an eye patch. Um, and I didn't really have a lot of energy. So most of what I did took a lot of time to build up my endurance. Um, Fortunately, at the end of a year, my double vision went away, and I was able to pretty much do everything at at the previous level that I could. Um, it's almost 7 years later now, and the only physical limitations I have are that my balance still isn't 100%. And if I move my head from side to side, I have to wait for my vision to settle. Um, it's a similar experience if you step off a merry-go-round or something that's moving and it takes a second for your vision to stop. So that still happens, but fortunately, I don't get nauseous. So um, that was, I'm very fortunate and very lucky that those are the only physical limitations I have because they're not really that bad.
Okay.
What I learned, though, is that the emotional recovery happened after the physical recovery began to slow down, which I didn't anticipate. I thought they would be happening at the same time. And so for me, it took a few years to begin to feel comfortable that this was basically going to be a new life. Um, in terms of how I thought about things, how I felt about things, how comfortable I was with such a radical emotional change, and the fact that I wasn't really affected so much by sadness or joy the way that I used to be. It was all very new. Um, a good example, I was visiting a friend of mine and we were watching the sunset, and it was really beautiful uh, because there were trees and water and the sun was setting. So intellectually, I could appreciate how beautiful it was, and I was waiting for the emotional impact of that beauty to hit me, um, where I imagined I would sort of feel it like a rush in my chest or something where you really feel awe, and that never happened. So that sort of took a lot to feel comfortable with, that there was going to be a disconnect that hadn't been there before. Um, and I've been working with a therapist to help me sort of understand how I process emotions now. But those were sort of the biggest changes that I had to deal with. Um, it took about 3 years before I felt comfortable to really enjoy what my experience now.
Mm,
And after that, I was sort of able to move forward with a career change and feel really comfortable that I could make the most out of this opportunity of a second chance.
that is so uh, inspiring, and it's incredible uh, to understand how resilience, how human spirit's capacity to overcome, uh, the limitations or the roadblocks. It can be so inspiring. So Once again, thank you. Thank you so much, Andrew. Also, how did you find the mental strength to keep going during those toughest times?
Um, I read a great book called Man's Search for Meaning, which written by an author named Viktor Frankl. That helped. He talked about how it's possible to find joy and fulfillment in any situation. So that reading that helped. Um, Also, what helped was hearing from other people that my experience wasn't unique to me. I would often message people online who had had brain injuries and tell them about my symptoms, and they would say that that was probably a typical response. Um, one of one of the experiences I have now is that I used to remember most of my dreams, and now I don't remember most of my dreams. So, hearing from someone else letting me know that that happened to them helped me to feel less alone. And while it didn't really help with the problem, it helped with the way that I would address it. At least it wasn't something that was strange. Um, and having that sense of support and community was sort of what allowed me to feel more comfortable with the uncertainty of the future.
Mm. Also, Andrew, you have taken on the role of caregiver for your mother who has ALS. How has this experience influenced your views on caregiving and self care?
Well, unfortunately, my mother passed away in September, um, but I was able to take care of her for about a year and a half. What's interesting is she took care of me when I first left the hospital, um, and I was recovering. So it was really nice that I could um, be her caregiver after she was my caregiver. Um, it was also uh, really enlightening for me because ALS has no cure. And there's really nothing you can do to help um, make it better. Really, you can basically just slow it down. Um, so what I realized was there wasn't anything I could do to help in the long run, but I could make each day more enjoyable. I could give her a quality of life that was the best we could sort of hope for. So I think a lot of people, when they're trying to help somebody who is healing, they want to solve the problem. Um, they want to make them feel better. And what I've learned is that's really not as helpful. Rather, it's more helpful just to be present and help them to feel more comfortable with their situation.
Mm. I mean, I'm so sorry for your loss, Andrew, and obviously rest in peace from all of us for your mother. Such a beautiful soul, and it's really, really, I think, very emotional and heartfelt to understand. Once she was a caregiver for you, then you took the role for her, and of course, it's a beautiful relation uh, shared between a mother and a son. So thank you so much, Andrew. And I think caregiving is such a profound act of love and dedication. People often overlook on this role, but I think with insights from people like you, I think we should spread more and more awareness about how important caregiving, is a role for anyone to take it up. Also, spirituality often plays a significant role in recovery and caregiving. So, it's how has your spiritual journey evolved through these experiences?
Um, well, I not allowed, but I've understood that there is a lot happening that can't really be explained, that I've just accepted as um, uh, something spiritual, perhaps. Um, you know, I used to think that the fact that I don't process emotions the same way was a negative thing. Um, but it also helped when I took care of my mother. If it was really emotionally a sad, overwhelming moment, it didn't affect me. So I could remain helpful and objective and not feel emotionally overwhelmed. Um, Also, previously, I had always thought that I would get married and have children and start a family. But if I had done that, I wouldn't have been able to take care of my mother, um, because I basically moved back in with my parents and lived with them so that I could be her primary caregiver. But if I was married with my own children, it would have been really difficult for me to move back in with my parents. So there were a lot of things that seemed to fall into place that led me to believe that there's a lot happening in the universe that's
Mhm.
really inexplicable. Um, Whether or not that falls completely under spirituality, um, that sort of opened uh, my mind into thinking that there's a lot happening here that I don't understand. Um, and rather than trying to understand it or fight it, I'm going to just go with it.
Absolutely.
So whether or not that's um, more of a Buddhist interpretation or a Taoist interpretation of the universe or a philosophical interpretation, um, I've been much more open to everything.
Of course, of course. Irrespective of any particular religious teachings, I think uh, it's a basic thing. You know, when you have good parents who have taken care of you and have made you what you are, it's a kind of what I believe. It's a kind of a spiritual service only. Taking care of your parents, taking up the responsibility, and sometimes you have to sacrifice. So hugely appreciate what you said, Andrew, and really, God bless you. God bless you.
Thank you.
Also, you have started a clinical mental health counseling program to help others recover from brain injuries. So, uh, how do you think your personal experiences have enhanced your ability to support others in their recovery?
Well, similar to how I felt less alone speaking with people who'd experienced what I'd gone through, I hope to be able to offer that perspective. I think sometimes when we get help from people, they it's impossible for them to understand uh, what someone else has been through. They do their best to be supportive, but I'm hoping that I can use my personal experience um, to help anyone really, whether or not they've had a brain injury or not, um, just to sort of feel more comfortable with managing the difficulty in their life. Um, I think I have a rare and unique perspective because of all of the things that I've experienced. So I'm hoping that that can be helpful to a lot of people.
Yep.
Um, but we will see.
Lovely, lovely. Another achievement of yours, I think I hugely appreciate. And it's wonderful to see how you are using your experiences to make a positive impact on others' lives. Uh, Also, writing is another significant part of your life. So, do you find writing to be a therapeutic outlet for processing your emotions and experiences, or just, a kind of journaling? That's what people do.
Um, yeah, I mean, I don't necessarily the fiction that I write, I don't necessarily use that as therapeutic. That's um just more enjoyable. But I've also changed my perspective about that. Previously, I had wanted the goal of writing to end with publishing what I wrote for other people to read. But now I'm just trying to find joy in the act of writing. So my focus has changed. Um, if I'm writing nonfiction about my experiences, that can have a therapeutic effect, especially if I um, take a step back and reread it and maybe see something that I wasn't aware of before.
Hmm. I think uh, your work definitely, I believe it definitely resonates with many. And also, you have performed multiple roles. You have worked in various places, from teaching to working in finance and theater. So, is there any particular experience that stands out as having a significant impact on your outlook, Andrew?
Well, I would say before becoming a counselor, um, all of the jobs that I had were basically to pay the bills so that I could pursue my writing. I didn't really look at them as careers or anything that could be satisfactory on its own. Um, but after the aneurysm and now discovering counseling, I'm looking at counseling as something that can just be, doesn't have to serve any other purpose than be helpful.
Mm, great, great, Andrew. So before we wrap up, Uh, what message would you like to share with our listeners who might be going through their own challenges, whether it's caregiving, recovery, or finding their spiritual path?
Well, I would say um, any kind of journey um, typically is never, it's not, it doesn't move in a straight line. It's usually a spiral. So some days it may feel like you're making a lot of progress, and other days it may feel like you're losing all the progress you've made. Um, and also everything happens in its own time. It took a while for me to feel comfortable in just allowing my healing to happen on its own without trying to make goals, to sort of force it. Um, those would be my two biggest uh, things, and also to take time to gauge the progress you're making. Um, often we move very slowly, and you can't really tell how much progress you've made until maybe 6 months, a year has gone by, and you can see how far you've moved. Plus, what I found to be difficult is it's very difficult to measure emotional progress um, because there's really no way to keep track of it. Um, Physical progress is a little easier. Like I needed my cane to walk, and then eventually I didn't need my cane to walk. So that was definitely progress. But with emotional recovery, um, there's really no way to measure it. So just basically to be kind to yourself, um, and allow for things to happen in their own way.
Lovely, lovely. And if our listeners they wish to connect with you and explore more about your work, your life experiences, or they would like to share something with you, how they can do that?
Well, I have a website. It's my full name. It's just Andrew, Andrew, dash Davie, DAVIE.com. So there's a contact button there if anyone ever wants to reach out. I also have all of my work listed, so if anyone's interested in reading anything, but that's the best way to get a hold of me.
Great. We'll have the details mentioned in the show notes. And Andrew, thank you so much for your words, your encouraging words for our listeners, and also sharing your incredible journey. And I think your story of recovery caregiving, it's really, really inspiring. It's so heartfelt. So thank you so much for this conversation.
Yes, thank you. I really appreciate it.
And to all of our listeners, I hope you found this conversation as enlightening and endearing, uplifting as I did. So, no matter what challenges you face, there is always a path to inner peace and better health. So, if you're looking for support or inspiration, please reach out to Andrew and explore the resources available to you. You can refer the show notes along with this episode. Until next time, stay strong, stay hopeful, and take care of your health and your loved ones as well, inside and out. Thank you.